Gandhi ji propounded the principle of non-violence throughout his life, but he considered it a duty of Indians to fight for the Brits, for the British in World War One and other wars. This conflicts the very idea of non-violence. My views on this: you are right. This does come into conflict with the very idea of non-violence. I mean, Mr. Gandhi expected Indians to not resist the British through violence, but he expected the people of India to take up arms, weapons, and go to distant shores on behalf of the British occupiers of India and fight for them and die for them. So this is Mr. Gandhi's non-violence, right? I mean, is there any logic in this? Is there any moral consistency? What is the principle behind this? Is there any principle behind this? Is there any ethic? Is there any ethical principle behind this? I don't see any. And there are many other contradictions to Mr. Gandhi, right? He spoke. He propounded nonviolence. He insisted on nonviolence, and yet he forced the Congress party to accept Shri Nehru as the first Prime Minister of India, even though they had voted for Mr. Sardar Patel. So even though there was a democratic election within the Indian National Congress and they unanimously or near unanimously voted for Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel as the first Prime Minister of India, Mr. Gandhi threatened to go on a fast until death, and therefore forced them by this means to reverse their decision and accept Mr. Nehru as the Prime Minister, even though Mr. Nehru did not get any votes. So isn't this an even worse form of violence? This is moral violence, isn't it? So these are my views on Mr. Gandhi. It is time to re-examine Mr. Gandhi's life and career. There are many questions about Mr. Gandhi's life. Let me ask a few questions. What was Mr. Gandhi doing in South Africa during the 2 decades plus that he was there? When you are in a foreign country, you need a source of income. Was he practicing as a lawyer? How many court cases did Mr. Gandhi fight in South Africa? And what was his income from these court cases? Or was somebody else funding his stay in South Africa? How did he acquire a big farm, a big commune in which he had many people who lived there? And who paid for this farm? Who paid for these people's sustenance? Who paid for everything there? What is the source of all this income? Why did Mr. Gandhi never reveal or disclose or divulge these sources of income? And when Mr. Gandhi came back to India, on whose behalf did he come back to India? And who parachuted him to the leadership of the Indian National Congress almost overnight? How did that happen? So there are many questions, unanswered questions about Mr. Gandhi. We need to critically re-examine Mr. Gandhi's career in its entirety. We need to go through every word that he wrote, and he wrote hundreds of thousands of words in writing. These are all available online. We need people to go through this, to sift through these words, and to uncover the real Mr. Gandhi. It is high time we do this.